Here we are, back with episode 19 of The Pit. We're already at 19, I don't know how. But today we are joined by very special guest, one of the best European casters this scene has, Pablo. How are we, my man?
Mate, we're doing all right. Still battling pit flu from last week. I didn't think it was a thing, and then I felt kind of okay at the start of the week, and then as it's gone on, it's just got worse and worse. So yeah, expect a few chuckly coughs. I've got the Cavonia ready to hand to keep the voice nice and silky smooth. But yeah, it's been an interesting week after an interesting week personally, and a fantastic week for Call of Duty.
It's a huge week, and I mean, you're already getting onto it, Pablo. I mean, you just free flow it yourself. I love it. Segment 1, we've got the Modern Warfare 3 Katana Spring Open. I mean, let's just start off. What was your overall view of it now you've had a while to reflect?
It's an interesting one. I think the bar for success was pretty low. We just needed to get it done, so it didn't, end up going back online. That's the problem with the previous one. There's obviously issues surrounding the attention to detail and the build up to it caused so many problems. And I think the venue itself in the original Sheffield one was a massive issue, and this was largely circumvented by a fantastic venue, the people who run it just bending over backwards to make it work, and then the superb kind of preparation period from Heffy and the team in terms of getting there nice and early, doing a ton of testing, making sure all the licenses worked, all the things that could go wrong were kind of circumvented, and then you were literally just left with the PCs breaking down and the schedule getting fucked in that sense. So it went really well in that sense. There was a lot that we can improve though, mate. Absolutely tons of stuff we can improve. Obviously, the production side was 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 more difficult than I anticipated, given the level of gear that I brought. We still had some teething problems. Their audio system wasn't great, so I've already spoke to them about potentially picking up a better audio system, and the way that they actually transmit from the streaming PCs to the large screen. It's a problematic. It causes a little bit of latency and a few other issues. But other than that, mate, you just can't argue. It was an incredibly enjoyable weekend. It was hard work. I mean, I was run down to all shit the Monday and the Tuesday, but yeah, it was well worth it.
Yeah, the Monday was it was a rough Monday, but well
It's a
worth it.
grueler. The
But
4 a.m. lock-in and then dropping hams off in Huddersfield and then driving back during the day. Yeah, let's not get pulled over on that day.
oh, I mean, yeah, a great weekend. Like I said, I mean, there's always room for improvement, but it's a pretty good baseline that they've got to work off. And I mean,
Yeah,
I think Major touched on the amount of cables that you had to bring to the event was
man,
absolutely
it was
crazy.
unbelievable. I literally used, I think, like 75% of my like regular video production stuff was just entirely used, but it was just more problem solving. So just little things like the PCs not having enough USB-Cs meant that we had to find ways to get the cameras online, and it was very jerry-rigged, really kind of ad hoc, but it worked. And it wouldn't have worked if anyone from that team is not there that day, that setup doesn't happen. Like if Jacko's not there, we'll struggle for production. If Jib's not there, that production would have massively struggled because everyone contributed a very important factor. Brody, if Brody's not there, there's no kind of brain on the outside of it all going, should you not just change things around this way? And everyone, like the bulb on everyone's head, just going, oh yes, we should. So it's all these little elements that people chip in, just make it so that it worked in the end. There's still some audio issues and some teething problems that we're going to need to solve for next time. But yeah, at least we know what the issues are.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, I mean, you said it there, like the team on the day, I think everyone was playing their role, and I don't think we could have asked much more from the people that were there and running everything. Because, like you said,
No, not at all.
I mean, the list is endless, right? We could make a
Yeah,
podcast on
yeah,
thanking people.
absolutely. Yeah.
Everyone was
The
incredible.
credits will go on for about 25 minutes. But again, what it's all about is the players, isn't it? At the end of the day, like I guess we need to get past the patting ourselves on the back phase as soon as possible because there's plenty that we did need to improve on, but it's all about the players really. And when you think about some of the redemption arcs that we saw at that event, and then obviously we saw you take the winning team, who's still probably one of the better teams in the EU. It was just nice to be able to cast over them and just see how good they are locked in under pressure. They were expected to win, and that kind of pressure can make some players fold, and it just didn't. Get guided quite adeptly by Niall. Just unbelievable. Keza again, just one of these players that can just slip into a team and just drop absolute numbers. So another player that don't be surprised in a year's time if you see him on a much bigger roster at some point as he starts to flesh out his capabilities in the scene. And then, I mean, the list of players, like obviously Nathan Parker's like the kind of the storyline in the sense that he just got so much shit for being a hacker, and then you see him play and it's like, oh my days, this kid's legit, like he's so good. But there was so many players that were like, it's a weird one. Like me and Chafin for so long have been casters over the kind of Detry side of stuff. We only came into challenges, 18 months or so ago. And prior to that, we were just reveling in doing our, Div 8 ACCL leagues and enjoying that. So we got to see quite a wide breadth of players. That's how we came across Felix and Smudge and Scooty and Scotty and those players. But it was nice to be able to see Azza, Shawnee, CJP. I know Copley's been around for a while, but I don't think I've ever cast over him. So it was good to see players like that absolutely fine. It was great to see Ben Wilson's team do really well. I mean, we've been casting over Ben Wilson for an incredible amount of time, and it was nice to see him, get to the main stage and get to the grand final. So just tons of stories about the players, and then everyone coming away just having a great time. Particularly the owners,
Yeah.
racking the shots up on the bar.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
pictures of 30 shots on the bar. Oh my days, that was rough.
they had a great time. And you said Niall's name as one of the first ones. He was the tournament MVP, but who was your MVP for that Katana run?
Um, I mean, I got to pick. I think you've got to pick Niall. I mean, Kez is a weird one for me because I think he bounces around teams so much and he just seems to be quite consistent. But Niall just just had, no matter what you put in front of him, he's just a very capable player. He looked great in respawns, whereas he's kind of a bit more known for S&D. I just think his role as well was way beyond that of just simply playing well. He's got to try and dig his team out of some very difficult games. And there was some, they really did go into some gruelers as
Yeah.
well because they were up against like really difficult teams that break your rhythm, play really ratty, and when they don't play as a side, you just end up with four very capable rogue players, and that can break a team's rhythm and make it very difficult for them to get map control. So yeah, I would probably say Niall. Obviously, some players that stood out. Azza had moments, Shawnee had moments, Nathan Parker had moments. Yeah, there was some individuals I'm probably missing out. Smudge probably again. I guess I'd have to say on behalf of Major Chafin, I think Smudge was probably one of the highlights as well. But you've got players like Lampy as well who had, absolute fried at times, just looked unplayable on the map, like really unplayable. But I think that also hindered his side in that he can go way too rogue, and that someone like Rico's trying to pull him back and get him, you can fucking the spawns up or something. But Lampy's gone, then he's just destroying the opposition. So yeah, a lot of players not surprised me, but just had really big performances in the LAN. And I think one of the things, mate, that was quite good is, and it in prior to the tournament, we weren't disappointed, but it was like it's a shame that we didn't see some of the really bigger teams in the event,
Yeah.
the Omits and the Wars and stuff. But then in the lead up to it, was talking to Chafe, and I was like, we both kind of agreed that that's probably for the best. In that, I think it's more enjoyable for some of the players to go a little bit deeper than they would have having to deal with players that have just so well versed in LAN and just really, really capable. So I think it was better that some teams that we're talking about potentially would have got double rounded much earlier,
Yeah.
straight into the tournament. So I think that went a long way to, the mythology and the kind of the vibes of the whole LAN being a lot better than it could have been.
No, I completely agree. And you said that some of the players it wasn't surprising, but did you have a most surprising player? Like, was there one player that you were like, I've never heard of this kid's name, but he's absolutely gross?
CJP a couple of times. It's not someone I've come across because we've largely just done Sundays. We don't cast the Saturdays even when we're picking up the the cups kind of on the rotation channel or on Major's channel, or when we kind of working with you and Jack, we're by the point we're on the Sunday. It's again, it's those handful of teams that with the same players, Omit, War, Clutch Rain, Dizzy, and F Dot, those kind of players that we're consistently now going over. So CJP, I remember sticking out as having a couple of incredible games. Ben Wilson again, just for not having cast over him for so long, and then for him to put the performance in he did and look as determined and kind of mature. I remember in Sheffield, he just seemed like so incredibly young, but he seemed a lot more mature and a bit more solid as a person. So, yeah, just focused as well. I remember walking past and he'd come off main stage to go for a burst, and I was like, "You all right, Ben?" And he just looked like I'm locked in. I was like, "Go ahead, son." So yeah, it was nice to see him fry. But yeah, probably like I wouldn't say one in particular, especially given that the team that won were just head and shoulders above the rest. But yeah, Ben Wilson for me was probably one, and I think that's probably less of a surprise in terms of his potential capabilities and just the fact that we hadn't had a chance to see him play in so long.
Mm. No, he did. He had a good event, and especially I think like losers round 6, losers round 7, they're all passion rounds, they're all gritty rounds. Like he really
Yeah,
turned up for his team, and yeah,
yeah,
I think they deserve to be on that main stage against Noctum in that grand finals. To
yeah.
be honest, well
Yeah, it felt
earned.
like a coin toss at times.
Oh,
Like,
don't yeah,
it was so the margins between those like second, third, and fourth place teams at times, and Annex and V7 were just pushing teams as well as hard as they could. So yeah, obviously, I mean, we it's hard to say. I didn't get to cast a lot over Nathan Parker's team, so if at all, I think maybe I can't remember. But again, I think if you ask this question of Major, you get a different player, and if but you would probably get a player that we still cast over.
yeah,
But then Brody and Andy will have a completely different view of who would have been the surprise element there. And obviously, we know Nathan Parker was kind of the story of the event in that sense. But again, I just didn't get to see enough of him to really make a judgment call on that.
yeah. No, it's fair enough.
Because when I went to watch the game, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. It's so infuriating. The game's on, right? And I got collared by Connie for the conversation. I was like, dude, I just want to watch the game. And he's like, all right, let's watch it. And then I wanted to get the camera. So like, Connie, I'm just going to go and get this camera and I'm going to get some pictures. And he was like, all right, sound. So I go to walk off to get the camera and Derek collars me. This might be the Annex 22 esports game, by the way. It's like the best game of the entire tournament. And as I walk away, Derek collars me to sit in one of the cars with a 12-year-old to do content. And I'm like, dude, I'm trying to watch this game. He's going, just go in the car and just look at this kid. He's amazing. I was like, mate, this is not the content you need. Stop it. It was so weird. So I largely missed that game just because of like just pure randomness.
That's a story and a half, isn't it?
Like,
Oh,
why?
oh, that is that is quality. But I mean, was that your favourite match? I know you didn't manage to catch all of it, but was that your favourite match of the tournament?
Yeah, I think it
Yeah,
was easily the game of the tournament. It had easily the best reaction from everyone, really, the crowd, the players, the whole thing. It really set the tone as well for for what Annex were capable of doing and their players. It kind of that was the point where everyone sat up and went, "Oh, okay, yeah." Listen, I mean, the thing is, the 22 esports thing's a weird one, isn't it? Very odd elite. Like how that all transpired, really
yeah,
odd. Loads of question marks, like a ton of question marks over their actual capabilities. And then we know they've got a couple of players who are very, very good. And then there's a couple of players who just like they can be very inconsistent. And then they come up against this team that we've largely don't know anything about other than the kind of accusations that have been leveled, and they just put on the best display in the game is incredible. So yeah, it felt like the story right there. It was weird as well because you looking at the potential matchups beyond that, you were like, is there going to be a better game? V7, I think, put on a couple of good games as well. I think there was a couple of close
yeah.
contenders, but nothing with the response and reaction that that particular game gave.
No, I agreed. I mean, it's a hard one to outdo. I mean, it was unbelievable. But I mean, was there one team or a couple of teams that maybe you looked at where you thought you really haven't matched up to where I thought you'd be?
Well, I mean, knocked him for the start, made things a little bit dicey. Don't you? Obviously, I think one of the players had like a ridiculous KD at the very start of it, where they were just running through teams,
Yeah.
and I think at one point there was a 6.5 KD knocking about, which is like ranked play kind of KDs. But yeah, I think by towards the latter part of the bracket, I think knocked them, making it really difficult for themselves at times. I thought they would have dominated a little bit more because they so used to playing and scrimming that higher end of teams. But again, it's just testament to the determination and to the fact that LAN is not online COD. Like it couldn't be any more different. It couldn't have a different vibe. You're still and main stage. I think some players get a little get they when I was in bands years ago, we used to call it gig speed. So you'd go and rehearse your tunes and it'd be like, oh, whatever, they're at 120 BPM, and you get on stage and suddenly they're at 135, and you're like, what's going on here, boys? You're a bit nervous. And I think the same thing kind of happens. I think what happens to players is they get on main stage and they come out the blocks at 175%, and then they get themselves a fat lead and it's like, oh, there's going to be an upset, and then they fall off because their gig speed's gone. They're like main stage adrenaline's fell off. They're back to the way they play, and then suddenly you see this massive turnaround from a more consistent team. So, yeah, it's a weird one for in terms of surprise teams. But yeah, I think just the fact that a couple of the teams, like Rico's team, Ben's team, were they're very janky kind of sides, and it just made it a bit trickier for Noctum. So I think that was more surprising than anything else that it wasn't superbly dominant. I think Resi said it's a lose-lose. I don't think it was as bad as that, but I think I understand where he's coming from.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, it, I've seen it this weekend as well. Like, if you win it, you're expected to, and like, if you lose, if you don't win it, then it's like it's a double whammy because it's like
Yeah,
should we even be playing at this level? Do one of us pack it in? Like, it can
yeah.
really it can really spiral when you're expected to win something with such a large margin. But yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Perception's an issue as well, especially for players like Nile, Resi, and Detain, and that's a huge perception. Oh, one player that really didn't surprise me, but I just had like the most up and down disarray. Like the game, they had such a weird tournament. At times, he was like unplayable, and then just when his team needs him, he would fall off, and you were like, "Luigi, please, come on, man." So yeah, just a bit of a weird. That was an odd player to follow, but at times he was incredible. But I think for Noctum, perception is an issue. Like if you don't win that, it can have an impact on yourself as a player and how the top players see it. Because Niall is the kind of player that is going to potentially get picked up by one of the top three if there's a gap. I think he's that good. I think Keza has got, a little bit of consistency to get into his game, but I think he's another player that could
yeah,
potentially do that as well. Detain and Resi are the kind of players that can dominate. We've had this conversation before, especially just after Wardy went, with how they can dominate the map as well. So if they don't win that, I think it might knock the perception in some of the top 16 players as well in terms of their capabilities. Like I think they're looking at that thinking they should definitely win that.
uh, 100%. I couldn't agree more. But I mean, stepping away from the plays and the matches, I mean, is there any way you think they could improve the event for next time?
Yeah, oh, 100%. Potentially open up an extra day so that we can run a little bit of less games on the Saturday and run them Friday, Saturday, which obviously is tricky for people who work and all the other stuff. But if you're given enough time, then I think it's better. It's a little bit more expensive because it means the extra stay in the hotel, I suppose. So you have to weigh up some of these. It's going to stay 32 teams, I think. I think Heffy had this dream that it was going to expand to 64, and I think he's realised quite swiftly that that's not going to be the case at all, unless I think that mezzanine would just crumble under the sheer sweat of the place. Um, I think so I think now we know that there's potentially need. So a couple of things that are not Heffy's fault. The Wired lobby were understaffed. Their IT guy, their main IT guy, wasn't working there. And their main kind of handyman fix-it guy is in a coma in France. So there's that. So they were massively understaffed. And the IT thing would have been important because the other thing is when you Alt F4, it resets the PC, and that's a 15-minute um, turnaround to get everything loaded back in and signed back in. So if you get three players rage quit like that, it's a 45-minute turnaround when you've only got one person logging in the PCs. So you've got issues like that that need to be addressed, and that just means that we probably need a few more IT people, whether it's Katana people who would understand the login process and can do it quickly. So that would improve the schedule. Obviously, expanding the days to an extra day would massively improve the schedule. And from the production side, just improving the sound. From the wired lobbies end, they need a new setup. And from our end, I just need to bring, it's unnecessarily technical, but I just need to bring dynamic mics instead of the Rode Wireless Go 2s. So these headsets. Sorry, is that better?
Yeah.
Such a knobhead. These headsets were great, and I think they sounded really good on stream, and you could actually hear them in the auditorium. But the ones that Trey and Ant had, they weren't particularly good. So we need to improve that, and then just the time it takes to get everything set up and good to go. I think for the next time we're going to have. Sorry, now you can really hear how bad things are. For the next time, I think we're going to have look at doing 3 areas. So we're looking at potentially doing at the seated area, the caster area, and then potentially kind of an entertainment area, whether that be kind of music or something, some other area where we don't have a be right back screen. So for a long time, me and Major I've thought that at an event like this, and there should never be a be right back screen. So I think you probably agree with this, that there were enough personalities at that event that we could have had someone talking on that couch almost permanently throughout the day if the schedule wasn't as long. So if we say the schedule was 8 to 10 hours rather than the 12 hours that it ran, I think we could have had people talking on the couch. We could have had a ton of different stuff, interviews on the floor, all these other things. I think that when you look at the CDL, you can see just how poorly organised it is, that they have these huge gaps at lands when they've got a massive stage. Like, organise some musicians to play, have a ton of pre-recorded content. Why are you going to these 10-minute gaps, 12-minute gaps? What the hell? It's £1 million to put on an event, and you can't put something on that's all day. It's amateur hour, and so for next time, our job is just to show them up and show them how it can be done. So I think that's the way we're going to be leaning towards. We're going to make an effort to try and make it so that it's more entertaining for the viewer and there's no gaps.
I agree. I mean, I absolutely love it. You're cooking up a storm, Pablo, as ever. But one last thing while on the Katana topic. I mean, is there any words for people who didn't attend this event that are debating on going to the next one?
Just go. Even if it's just as a spectator, the place is great. You've got a ton of stuff to do. We make sure that there is sponsors there, so if you want to buy some stuff, you can get some stuff. We set up a 1v1 area which was almost permanently used. I don't think it was ever empty, and it's the kind of thing that just adds to it. The guys have got the racing sims there. I don't think a lot of people used them. I think they were probably they have like multiple settings on them, and they put them on like the simulator, and it was a little bit, I know, scary to get in, and it was difficult to do. I think if they make it more arcadey, that would be good. There's a bar, and the food, they don't advertise it very well, but the food's really good there. So there's a ton to do. You've got a ton of games to watch. The passion pit, even though spectators aren't largely allowed in there, that it's completely glass. Like, you can see the first row of monitors. So if you do want to watch some of the games, you can watch it through that. So there are tons of stuff to do, but come as a team. Like, I don't care if you're, Div 7, if you're bronze, whatever, just buy a pass and come and experience it. In fact, the lower you are, the more likely you are to go and play a great team and get a feel for what it's like. And that kind of experience is invaluable. And plus, you're going to see what it's like to play on LAN. Your hit reg isn't an issue anymore. You've got, obviously, it's not truly LAN, is it? You're still largely online, but it's all in house. It's all within that same server, so it's a lot better in terms of your ping and your hit reg and stuff like that. So if you're a young team or a new team to pick up a pass and invest in yourself, I always say this, like, the only way to get better is to spend money on yourself and put practice in, and that is definitely the best way to do it.
You've heard it. Get yourself a team pass. Get down to the next one, because
100%.
It's incredible. But that's going to round off segment 1. Straight into segment 2.
Yeah, let's go.
The Modern Warfare 3 EU Elite Stage 1. this has been a movie. I mean, I don't honestly even know where to start with this one. I mean, bracket play. I mean, sorry, pool play. We should start with that. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like this is going to be an obvious answer, but I mean, your biggest disappointment, your biggest shock.
Well, I mean, I didn't get to see quite a bit of it, but obviously, you're just looking at Group A, and you boys being far. I was a little surprised at the 1 and 4 from you guys, given the quality that you would get. Obviously, Omen finishing second isn't that surprising. I don't think they know how to play groups really well. You're going to see some of the answers from Steve Owen a bit about where their mindset is. But yeah, I didn't get to see quite a lot of this, so I'm just trying to go over it in terms of the performances again. 22 esports, 0 and 5 isn't that surprising. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm not that surprised at the group stage um, results, and then going into the final week. I mean, this week, just having a look now, fucking,
I
I
mean,
slept through this. I played rank play for like, I'm so bad. But yeah, again, it's not that surprising. Team War again. It's just since they started, right, they come out the blocks flying a superstar team. Like, they are loaded to the hilt. And now it's slightly different now. They come out the blocks flying, but it hasn't surprised me that they fell off. Like, it doesn't surprise me at all. And I don't even say fell off. Like, I think them and Clutch have stagnated, and I don't think it's their fault. Obviously, Byron getting picked up and then Brezzy getting picked up is going to have a huge impact, especially Nasty and how much he delivers to that team. And the fact that Steve Vortex, for year on year, has unlocked any puzzle that's been put in front of him.
yeah. I mean, I was Clutch Rain. You said it there, like that winners finals against Omi. I don't know if you watched it, but to me, like they should have won it. Like, there's no way they watched that back and they don't think they should have won the series. Like, it was an absolute breakdown. They should have been that team in grands, and then they drop down into losers finals against War and just get absolutely smoked. Are they a team from like your history with them that are one that like struggle to hit a quick regain? Like, are they very momentum based?
Now, I think the problem with Clutch has been when Brezzy first went to the CDL, I think they were still largely coasting on the information, knowledge, the way he drives the team. And I don't think you can put a value on what a player with that level of COD intelligence can do in a game and how he can maintain your composure. And I think we're largely starting to see that the loss of Brezzy a little bit. We're starting to see that lot, so they can still practice. I think they'll have learned enough to be able to practice well outside the actual games. But when it comes to that in-game resilience and the ability to bounce back, I think you're relying on an experienced head to keep you cool. And when you've got Cobra and Twizz, both hyper aggressive players, and Twizz can be ridiculous at times in terms of not being able to rein him in. I think, again, it's a conversation me and Major have on our clubs all the time. Last year, Twizz was super inconsistent. This year, Twizz is super consistent. But I think the loss of Brezzy has just a lot, again, it's making judgment calls. And if decision making isn't your like top trump 99 attribute, then and slaying is, you're going to go and slay. That's what your nature's going to fall back to that. So it's a tricky one with Clutch. Again, you talk about they should have won the round, but you've really got to look to the kind of resilience from Omid. The amount of times we've cast over the Steve Vortex team that's got .1 on the clock and they've still managed to turn it round is we stop even trying to predict. Like, we stop planting flags for teams. We stop trying to predict it because he makes us eat our words all the time.
Yeah, I don't think there's a more highly regarded player, or he's definitely up there in the conversation as the most highly regarded
Mate,
player in challenges.
it's the most ridiculous situation I think in the world, and we're gonna he answer. I ask him the question, what is the roadblock, and we'll get to the answer. But mate, it's the problem he's got is that he's an incredible SMG in a game that's not really built for SMGs, and he's a really good AR player when he needs to be because he's smart. He's the best in-game leader the EU I think have ever produced. He's probably the smartest Call of Duty player in Europe. He's so well regarded. And I think the problem is that when the CDL look at him, they see that his LAN performances when he goes to NA have been a bit hit and miss. And obviously that's what they're
they're looking for is good LAN performances. But I think they're missing out on some of the intangibles. Like they're missing out on his ability to make to mold diamonds. You know, he can shape a rough diamond and make it into something incredible, while at the same time making his team win against much better opposition, like consistently solving that problem. And you look at the bottom four teams in the CDL, they are crying out for a player like that. They don't need a Real. They don't need a young cracked god. They need someone with a brain that can get them great practice and have them so in the melee of a mad game can get them through to the win without all of them going positive.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, he should be there. Hopefully, he will be soon. But do you see anyone being MWIII this year? Do you just see them win every tournament?
Well, revenge tour's back, baby. So you just don't know. His nemesis, he's got a lot of respect for Bjorn. He's just talking to Steve about it again. We'll get to that in the segment, but he's got a lot of respect for him. And Beans again, I think I asked him the question, and obviously Major asks all the polite questions like, "What's it like being in the CDL? Oh, is it exciting?" And I'm like, your team's been a bit shit, mate, and is Denser going to solve that? And he's just like, it's not been that shit. I'm like, it has, let's be fair. You're full of superstars. You should be absolutely dominating this scene with the players and the experience you've got. Is Denser going to solve that issue? And I think it largely is. I think Denser is Steve Vortex's Achilles heel. I think that if there is one player in the league right now, potentially that can cause him an upset, it's going to be a Denser filled team that's surrounded by absolute talent, which is exactly that. So the only thing really is now for them is they need a coherent voice. So if you've got a battle now with Bance, you know, is the in-game leader and Den's an in-game leader, who's going to have that? You know, they can't get into the point where they're arguing or making or being slightly indecisive in games because MWIII don't have that issue.
No, and I mean, you'd like to think that them players played at such a high level that they should be able to overlook any minor issues like that. And it should never come to it. But yeah, I mean, you never know. These got players, do you? You never know.
They've got so many issues to take into account. They might have got potentially two big in-game leaders. We talk about that, but I mean, Beans has got a super amount of experience as well, and he's a loud player who likes to have his opinion. And then you've got to look at the fact that, you know, MWIII in a weird position in that I don't think Steve-O and Weeman are expecting to get called up. I think they just want to win as much as they can when they can and see what happens. So they're not like in a race right now. They just want their team to be the best in Europe and then do as well as they can in the NA lands. Whereas the boys in War, I think there's like, they look at what's gone on with Byron and Bance is probably thinking, I should be back in the CDL, and we know he should be. Like, it's ludicrous that Bance isn't playing in it. It's ludicrous that Beans isn't playing in it because they're both incredible players, and I don't know how much of that plays a part in their individual desire to do well and whether that's having an impact on the overall cohesion of the team and why maybe results aren't going their way. A lot of it's conjecture, but you can only look at how the results and how they play and pick it from there. So hopefully the pick up of Denzer. Denzer's a force of nature in himself. I'm just interested to see how the Core Cat Scuff thing goes.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, right? Because obviously War have got a sponsorship with a scarf. Then there's the Denzer thing with Core. I mean,
they'll get round it. They'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, we're soon see, mate. I can't imagine the issues, right? I mean, these are all very intelligent people that it would probably already been spoke about. Or it might just not be an issue. Who knows, mate? We might just be making something or nothing. Who knows?
Mate, that's it. This is the problem, and especially for me because I'm, you know, outside of a couple of years ago, I'm largely not involved in the, rotation Ant's the guy to go to because he's in those chats and he has those relationships where he can ping someone a message about, top secret news and he'll get the information. Whereas I largely have to like butter up Beans to try and get a bit of information or whatever. And obviously everyone's super cagey because whereas rotation Ant will wait till the appropriate time to release it, I'll just go on a podcast and be like, the dickheads, they should have done this. So yeah, that's the other issue, I suppose, where people can be a bit cagey. But again, it is conjecture, and we can only go off the way they play and the results, and we might be made to eat our words, and we might be incredibly wrong, but that's all we've got to go on. That's why we do it.
No, I mean, well, we're recording this on the Sunday of Cup 4. Team Moore might come out and smoke it, and by the time we release this, we might look like a couple of wallies. So, well,
Absolutely,
I mean,
yeah.
it's a storyline, and we love storylines. But Omid, do you think Hicksy, they've been buffed or nerfed?
So again, this is like trying to stay cagey because it's one of the questions we did ask Steve Vortex. So it's a weird one. It's Real. I think there's a misconception about Real as being this kind of loose cannon, crazy, go kill hunting kind of player when he's largely been a hill kitten who's just got a ton of interactions by defending hill time really well, which is why he's largely got a load of kills and low deaths. And I think Hicksy brings a little bit more option to the team if they don't want to go down that route. So they've obviously Steve-O is an incredibly fast SMG player. I think he runs his AR very similar. Mythics is obviously totally bonkers. Like Mythic, I think Cobra gets a lot of plaudits that Mythics should also get. I think there's a lot of conversation about Cobra being next up, but I think Ben is probably just sat there like going, well, what about me? Like he keeps producing, performances day in day out, so I think he's another player to have a conversation about. But yeah, I think Hicksy brings a different element and more experience, I guess, than Real can, just purely because of his time at Toronto. So yeah, I think I don't want to be mean to Real and say that they've buffed, but I think it's a different. I think whereas I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, whereas Real was one type of player that did something very well that helped Omid, I think Hicksy's a different type of player that's going to offer them a slightly different option, and might open up the way that they play different modes as well. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Real just dropped straight into that side though, copy. Like I didn't even see that coming.
No.
Like when they picked him up, I was like, oh, this could be interesting. How's that going to work? And it was just like hit the ground running, like really did hit the ground running. So yeah, and I mean Hicksy's probably going to do the same. Let's be perfectly honest. I mean we're shuffling a very small deck here. Over the last 2.5 years, we are shuffling a largely small deck.
Yeah, no, 100%. But I feel like I admit more. Obviously, they get most of the love for obvious reasons and Clutch Rain, but it was an 8-team bracket. I mean, so we had the core cut roster of Maestro, Chunk, Wardy, and Denza. What did you think on that team?
Right, so I'm gonna drop Maestro and Chunk in the shit here, but I've heard that they're not keen on doing VOD review, and not keen on doing practice, and not keen on kind of doing the fundamentals that make some players great. And if that's the case, how the hell are they doing the kind of performances that they do? Because they are incredible. And Maestro, Chunk, please call me out on bullshit, because that's what I was. I can't remember who told me, but that's what I was told. It was a player as well.
Oh yeah, I've heard it from 3-4 different people, and I've said it to Chunk as well. And like I've spoke to him, and he's like, it just isn't the case. Like that just isn't what happens. And obviously, he just joined Noctum, and like he seems so motivated. So like, unless he's like super motivated, like and then he gets into it and it doesn't happen. I don't know, but I don't see a world where like he's always on, he's always grinding. But yeah. I've been told the same, mate. So I'll be honest, you're not out of line saying it. Like, that's what they say.
This is the way I feel about Asim, you see. I think he's a player that when he gets into a new team, he's like an absolute supernova for a short period of time, gets settled and then drops off. It seems to happen. And you see that with players. Loads of players just get settled and they come out at 150 miles an hour and then, partway through the season, they're at 50 miles an hour. So, it doesn't surprise me. But if you think, it's more worrying that we're hearing that from other sources, and whether that's a jealousy thing, because Maestro drops numbers when he plays. He is probably one of the hottest properties in terms of like rookies and challenges that you could get. He's an incredible player. I remember me and Chafin cast over the team. It was Maestro, Chunk, Twisted, and Aspect. And can you imagine that? And they were playing some bad sides. They were dominating some bad sides. And Chafin had come in and said, this team have got like a bit of a reputation as being very good, and now they're spread among the top 8 sides, so it's not that surprising. But yeah, Denza and Wardy, that's a mad side. That side's bonkers. Like, yeah. It's not the most. you're not going to be conventional map control with that team. It's just going to be a bloodbath for like 250 seconds of hardpoint. You're just going to be getting shot in the arse quite a lot. So yeah, a very good side. But again, I think their placing shows you like they've all got individual capabilities. But a Denza team finishing that low would not have happened a few years ago. Would have been more cohesive. He probably would have had different players. I just think it tells you about the potential in that side. Maestro and Chunk have still got a way to go. I think there's that maturity that you get, that you learn as you play with better players.
It's probably been like, even being in that team like this year, the way it's gone is probably highly beneficial for them. And like another thing, like you said, it's such a small deck. Like when you leave a team and like you're talking to someone outside the perimeter of the camera, like, are you really going to be like, oh yeah, they're fantastic, they're a great bloke, because you know you're not teaming with them soon, and like, do you want to try to put other people in the mud where you know that relationship's burnt for a little bit? Like, what do you
Their
think?
politics plays a huge amount in this. Like when I used to speak to Looty, like it is like every fifth line when we talk about how things move, he'd say it's so political in this scene, and you think that it's you use a microcosm of the larger Call of Duty scene. It gets even worse in NA. So the fact that you're seeing EU players getting picked up into NA challenger rosters is great for that fluidity, and the fact that maybe it's getting a little less political. But I think it's still largely a friends. You know, people don't want it. People, you can be a really great player. I've heard about why one player in particular didn't get picked up by the London Royal Ravens, and it was because he was too angry. I mean, they just didn't want to team with him because he gets too worked up when he loses, and people just didn't want to team with him, and that's why he didn't end up in the league. And it's a player who thoroughly deserves to be in the league, and you just like, that's just you need, there's got to be a point where the money in this esport, you need to start treating this esport like any other sport. Like if you were a star quarterback, or you were banging in 40 a season and you were a bit of a knobhead, Real Madrid would still pick you up, and the manager would just have to deal with you being a bit of a knobhead. So I'm sorry, but the point that Call of Duty becomes a respected esport in the world of other esports is the point when you can get four people who don't massively get on, but who are fundamentally perfect as a team, win champs. That's the point where I think, yeah, we've stepped beyond the it's a mates league kind of situation.
No, I agree. Another team I want to talk to you about, Pablo, was Team Moon. They came into the elite. The word out the scrim chat was that they're really, really good at hardpoint, and then. Like, to me, they look like possibly the best hardpoint team in Europe. You know, top 3 definitely for me. And then they end up getting top 8 in the bracket in like the most unfortunate way possible. I mean, what do you think with Team Moon?
So for me, Moon is a weird one. Like they've always largely had a very similar setup. Obviously now it's been shuffled a little bit with Kels retiring as such, and then just kind of doing more content-based stuff in the WXC. So yeah, I think that. Oddly, it broke up what had been largely quite a solid structure for a while. BB Connor, mate, is playing his best Call of Duty right now by a mile. The kid has been dropping numbers. He's always had really good potential, and I don't even think he's been that inconsistent. I don't think he's just had the opportunity to stay in a team for long enough. But then it's just about getting him with the right group of players. I think I don't really know much about Genesis, despite the fact that I've probably cast over him about 1 billion times, other than the fact that he's quite tall. But yeah, other than that aspect, is in that Maestro, Chunk, Twisted kind of group of players who's very capable. But I think Aspect may have been, I don't know whether it's Aspect or Twisted, may have been the weakest player out of the 4. I think he's got the longest to go. But hopefully, you know, if he hears this, it's no disrespect, mate, just it is how it is, you know, you just got to plow on. Dizzy, for me, is the most interesting player in EU Call of Duty right now. He's such a weird player. He's really clever. His decision making's really good. His ice in the veins is peak. Like he literally can just stop and watch players run past them to get the 3-piece, whereas some players would absolutely shit the bed and just try and slay everyone in front of him. I think if he could get his gun skill into the Beans Wardy bracket of gun skill, then I think you're dealing with an absolute beast, because as an in-game leader, I don't think people realise how he's calm. Me and Major were fortunate enough to be able to sit in TeamSpeak for a few of their scrims, and he's really calm. He's like got a nice little bit of authority about him. When people get riled up, he's the first person to say you're not helping the team. You know, you're arguing with someone or doing them down, but you're not telling them what the issue is, and you're not improving where they are. It was really interesting to hear him go over that, and I think he brings the best out in the players around them. I think Team Moon are just, if they can stay together for a bit, but I don't want to be mean to individual players, but it's probably the most uneven team in terms of quality of individual players. I think Dizzy and Connor are amazing players individually. I think Genesis and Aspect are more fundamental players, and I think you'll see that when they play really well together, they're an incredible hardpoint side. But I think when it becomes that more strategic play, and it's not working for them. So it's a weird one, but I don't think Connor's going to stay in that side if he keeps playing the way he's playing.
Yeah, he might. Yeah.
And Dizzy, if Dizzy just works this year, I think he's got the makings to be a really, really solid in-game leader in the EU, especially if we start to see, Vortex does get picked up, if Denzer does do well this year, and I can't imagine that he's going to get picked up. But again, if you look at the top 4 in-game leaders in the top 4 teams, I think Dizzy's got an opportunity there to break into that top 16 set of players. He just needs to improve his game on an individual level, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. And there's 2 more teams I want to talk about, but I mean, Revived. We'll start with Revived. I mean, a great brand. The owners are a really sound bloke. They've had a really good elite, which I'm super happy for them for. And like you said, I mean, the roster with like Keza on, this kid, to me, just keeps improving week by week by week. I think a top 6 in this elite is a very, very good placement, especially seeing as they took War to a map 5, if my brain serves me correct. I mean, what do you think? What's your vibe with them this stage 1?
It's a weird one. They've got great individuals. They've probably got the best set of individual players that are not in the top 4 teams or top 3 teams. And I think they will be disappointed with that. I think that side could, if they stay together, they practice and really go to town on this S&D, because they're the hardpoint team. That they should beat everyone at hardpoint. That team is insane. They practice their S&D and just get, stay together, make sure they've got a good coherent voice in the team. They shouldn't be finishing there. They should be vying for 4th spot with 5 Media Clan. Like, there's no, other than the fact that Super can be like the most unplayable AR in the world at times, and Sukri's got a really nice amount of experience. There's no reason that team shouldn't be fighting for them for 4th place, and there's no reason that team shouldn't be putting Clutch Rain under pressure. Like, F-Dot on his day, I mean, we know he's like 3-dot at the minute because of the fucking performance he had, which is whatever, but F-Dot can be amazing, and I know we kind of biased towards him, but Felix can be an incredible player. Pac has been, one of these players that has bounced around the underside of the top 3 teams for a while, but he's an incredible player. We've talked about Geza, and Twisted for me was the other player.
Yeah.
Maestro and Twisted. Like, Chunk, I think, is more inconsistent than Twisted. And Twisted's, some of the figures he was dropping. There was a terminal S&D where he was in double figures at one point. I don't know if it was this week in particular, but I remember watching a game this season where I was like, how has he got that many kills? Like, he's an insane player. But again, we talk about 4 individuals not making maybe the most amazing team. They need to work on that.
No,
apologies about the monotone voice. I am genuinely dying. Genuinely.
You're all good. We'll get through it as quick as we can for you, Pablo, so you can get some more of that Cavonia, mate. If you need a mouthful at any stage, feel free.
Yeah, it's all good.
But no, I mean, F-Dot quickly at the start of the year, I mean, he might look like one of the best players in the game. Like, if I can see him get back to that pace, and I think then that could really excel that team. And
I think he needs to do something big at LAN. He needs to be he needs to be a player that's talked about at an NA LAN. Like, if he wants to go anywhere, he needs to improve his game for a start. He needs to iron out some of the inconsistencies in his game. For that's the first key. He needs to be a little bit more mature. I think that's just a little bit of immaturity in his game as well, which is why you see some poor decision making. I think right now, I think he's struggling because he hasn't got a more experienced, like a superbly experienced player around him. A big name player. I think that can kind of under his wing him. But I think he needs to have a massive run. I think he just needs to make that next step, and whether that happens or not is down to him. But he's under a lot of pressure because there are players. Maestro for me is the player that's going to put him under quite a bit of pressure. You've got players ahead of him that are already kind of mythics and those kind of boys that he's going to have to do something special to unseat. Right now, if I'm Steve Vortex or Bance or any of the French lads, I'm not picking him up. And that largely for me, as if I was effed up, would be that needs to be addressed. Like, I need to be that player in that conversation this year. By the end of this year, he needs to be in that conversation. Otherwise, it's going to, next year is a quite a huge question mark as to the format of everything. So it's a weird one.
No, I agree. And quickly, last one, on the elite. Falcons. I mean, for me, like, I think it was Cup 1 in Boston. Like, they didn't honestly look fantastic, and then they've come back like Cup 2, and then the elite. Like, it's like they've had a glow up. I don't know if they're new. The new player, the switch out worked, and then I don't know what Luti's been cooking in the lab, but for me, like, they really, really improved, and they could have pushed the top 4 for me if I'm honest.
Yeah.
What do you
Absolutely.
think? Absolutely.
Well, it's a weird one because we cast over them a couple of cups ago, and their S&D looked elite. Like, their S&D was horrific. They were putting everyone to the sword with their S&D, and you're thinking, well, if you've got your S&D correct, and you're largely coming from a very small pool of players, so there's not going to be anyone really knocking on the door other than Falcons Academy, which that's where they've rotated the player in. They've got the best opportunity as a 4-piece to really show what maintaining that a same team under good guidance can do. Again, it's a tricky one. I think their issue is largely going to be their ability to have consistent top end competition in things like scrims, and their natural be like. Obviously, the guys are based in London. They're all Saudi players, so I don't know how their makeup is of like going outside and doing S&D chows. Are they playing against mates from Saudi, or are they playing with the guys from the local area? Because when you're on the timeline, I don't see Roxas popping up looking for one with Steve Vortex for next. So you don't know what kind of quality they're getting. Those little things where you see the players pop up and they're playing S&D chals and it'll be F dot with someone and someone. They go a long way to really improving your game knowledge and your game brain. So those little things might have an impact on their overall ability to dominate the top 3 teams. But in terms of just intelligence that Luti gives them, and then raw ability, they've got a great opportunity to go on. But again, you just got to worry that they're a Div 1 team when everyone else is Premier League, and they're just not able to get the right kind of practice in.
No, I agree. And I mean, elite stage 1, Pablo, I feel like we could have 4 podcasts on it. You could talk forever on the topic around these players. But let's get onto the new segment, right? Segment 3, we've got Pablo Q&A. Pablo's reached out to some of the top players in Europe and asked some questions that we're all going to want to know the answers for. So, Pablo, do you want to take the floor with this one?
Yeah, sure, yeah. So I don't really know how to go about this, but basically I will start from the 3rd place team and work my way up. So I basically hit up Samir, Twizz, I hit up Beans, and I hit up Steve Vortex. I think, probably, Bance may have been more, I don't know, a different player to kind of hit up, but I know that Ben will offer a lot of information, and obviously Bance has been in the top end for so long. He'd be like, who's this mad old bastard asking me questions? So yeah, I spoke to Samir, so we were trying to keep everything. I remember we had the conversation copy where we were like, shall we ask him the same questions and see what the answer is? But I thought there's enough difference right now to be able to tailor the questions. So Did I ask them any questions? So Samir, got to go back. Sorry, this segment's going to be so sketchy. So Major asked one of the questions. What areas? This is for Twizz. What areas of his game did he manage to improve this year alongside the likes of Brezzy and Cobra? He seems to have come on leaps and bounds this year. Did he learn a lot from these guys? So that was Major's question out to him. Twizz, so yeah, I really started to learn how to really play after Elite Stage 3, and it was down to Cobra, Linz, and Eddie, and of course, yeah, Brezzy even more this year. So I think, take away from that is obviously that last year he was a very good player who had great moments, but would largely get usurped by some poor decision making. And I think that working with Brezzy has gone a long way to reining in some of his decision making, and he can be let loose at the right time to go and take over a map. And we've seen that in the way Clutch has played, but we may also have seen it in the way that Clutch has played in this week as well, and the fact that they weren't able to regain, and they kind of like largely confidence and psychology may have fell off. So let me jump on to next. So recent results in the elites haven't gone exactly Rain's way. Are we starting to see the effect of Brezzy's move to the CDL, or is it just a bump in the road? Because I'm going to ask the main questions, and he's going. And I mean, they did go 5-0 in the group stages, right? Which is, you can't beat that. But then so I'm going to preface this: when you see the answers of some of the other players, you kind of go, okay, yeah, so funny. But yeah, there was obviously the 3-2 loss to Ohm was jarring, and I think we saw that in the result against War. I think the fact that I think they lost their heads, and that goes back to the other question about Brezzy. Like, we are seeing that impact. They've lost their heads. Brezzy would not have allowed that, I don't think, and that has largely impacted them going into that final game where they've lost to War. So that there's an eye opener there, I think, in a little bit of the answer. And then with yourself developing into a consistent player in the same mold as Cobra, Rafi has been the surprise element for the viewing public. What is it that he brings to the team? So they talk about his composure. So he just basically says he's so calm and S&D and control. And he says, trust me, you don't want to play him in a 1v1 scrapyard. His gunfight is unmatchable. So a little insight into Rafi as well. So yeah, I think that Rafi, the surprise for us, I guess, Copy, is how seamlessly Henry dropped into the side.
Yeah, I was, no disrespect to him at all, but I was really like questioning. I was like, how is this going to work? I mean, and if anything, I think they are where they were with Brezzy. I think it's credit to Henry. I think he's done a fantastic job when he's come in. I think they should have been in grand finals. I really do. I think they should have been 7-0 up to grand finals and been in it. I don't know, because when they dropped down to War, I was like, well, War just 3-0 as like a Clutch Rain that's been playing very well, but then they get 4-0 by Omit in the grand. So I'm like, were War that good that day? Were Clutch just really, really bad? It's the first time in the year I've seen Cobra up like a 0.6, a 0.7. So I was like,
I think it goes to show that the effect that the 3-2 had on Clutch, and the fact that Brezzy's not there, has had a huge impact on their ability to regain and chalk off their performance. And then Team War have gone in 3-0. They must come in with confidence, and this is where you start to see that Steve Vortex is just largely unlocked. That puzzle. But again, we get to the Beans answers, because I think that, again, it's one of those 4-0 results that doesn't tell the whole tale. You see the 3-0, and then when you look at, how many games have we cast over where it's been the 3-0, but it's been 250, 249, 6-5, 3-2, and you're just like, it's gone to the wire each time, but the result looks like it was an absolute battering. But let's be honest, it's not been the case, and it could have easily gone the other way. So yeah, I mean, some of it's conjecture and some of it isn't. So a couple more questions for the boys, Clutch Rain. We've been really impressed at how Henry has fitted in and how he has done. He seems like a surprise choice from the pool of players available. I think it did take everyone by surprise that he was picked up. How did that move come about, and what do you think of his qualities? I think Twizz started to get a bit bored of the answers at this point. Henry's a class player. He used to play with Rafi also, so it was perfect for us. And yet Henry is the GOAT. So yeah, I think he was just like trying to big up Henry. Henry's a fundamentals. Henry's one of those players. It's a weird one. it like methods in America, dropping you never drop less than a 1 KD.
Yeah.
Sometimes he wouldn't set the world on fire, but you know if you could get 3 amazing players around him, he's there making sure that their performance doesn't drop below a certain amount, and then when he does need to pick it up, he can go absolutely off in a map. Like, you know, we saw that 11 streak or whatever he got on high rise control where he was just in their spawn, and it was just like you couldn't I couldn't, it was like horse racing commentary. I couldn't keep up with the kills he was slaying out in that map. So yeah, and it became a clip as well. So yeah, I think that's perfect, and the fact that him and Rafi have got that little bit of a connection goes a long way to making Clutch, you know, it couldn't be a better replacement really in hindsight for Brezzy, but no one would have predicted that, I don't think. And then the final question, you've been fighting for first spot with War and Omit, and you worried that recent roster changes may leave you behind, or are you prepared for a battle? So obviously with the boys having to change up in Omit, and then obviously things changing in War, and the fact that Clutch Rain have largely have obviously stayed the same, is that going to have an impact? So yeah, so that's just so funny. Before or after these roster changes, same shit for us. They are nicked. That's his total answer. And it's like, fair enough to me, that's sound. Yeah, he's the gentleman of the COD scene. He's one of the nicest guys in Call of Duty and EU, and I really do hope he is able to move on and really get, you know, mate, we're the same copy. We want all the CDL, we want all the players in the CDL, don't we? But yeah, I think it just goes a long way to the mentality of Clutch. I think they're trying to maintain, I think, as Brezzy's left, I think each player is trying to step up and make sure that they fulfill that. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them, you know, do well in the next elites. How they do in Miami, they did really well at LAN last time. I think they were the surprise EU side. So I don't be surprised if they push on as well. But we've got to obviously see. I'll jump onto Ben Beans now because obviously they came second. Ben had some internet issues yesterday and waited till the last very minute. And I did ask him to come on the podcast, but it was a definitive no. I mean, he couldn't have given me a stronger no in the responses. But yeah, so I shot out a few answers, but they're all over the shot, a few questions. So Majors was the first one, and it was classic Major. What are the main differences in teaming in the CDL to Challengers? Is the coaching much more intense or scheduled, or is it similar to the arrangement he has in Challengers this year? And that's from the Major, and his response: the only main differences are the amount of COD being played and S&D practice. We play shitloads more tournament COD in Challenges, but the practice is way worse in general, and especially the S&D practice. So I guess they've got a larger team, because obviously the CDL teams have got like coach, analyst, statisticians, you know, assistant coach, and then they've got GMs and stuff that'll be on them. It's a lot more like a regular business with a structure and HR, and they'll be, you know, grilled as employees. So practice will probably be of the highest order, and especially if your S&D practice is against CDL teams, which we'll come to in a second, because I did ask an off-the-cuff question about that. But yeah, a lot more Call of Duty play, but a lot less quality. I mean, is that going to have an impact? If that's the case, Copy, you know, you think about why some players go into the CDL and don't look great to begin with, and you know that they could play at that level. So when you see Eric Boom go there and everyone's straight on him, why isn't he dropping 40s? Why isn't he dominating? It's like, hang on a minute, mate. Chill the fuck out. The kids give him a second so that he can get up to speed. And the same with everyone. You know, you got to look, but that also, you got to look to Gwyn, who just hit the ground running in the biggest way possible. So what kind of talent has that kid got? I mean, he's NA based, so you do feel that they get a little bit better practice because their pool of talent is a lot bigger. But hell, that kid's hit the ground running. So I don't know, maybe that's an impact. What are your thoughts, mate?
I mean, S&D for me, like I saw it at Boston. I've just seen it in like the most recent Saturday Cup, like yesterday. Like I think a Roma's game against FaZe Black was a great example. We were all saying it when we were watching it. It's like the S&D in NA is like it's so much more structured. It's so much more passive. Like it's completely different to what we play. So I wonder if there is, like Beans is saying, like the S&D practice is just so much better in NA. Like maybe our S&D in Europe, maybe we think it's too good. Maybe it just isn't all that. I mean, that's why ultimately we're struggling at these tournaments, because the amount of map 2s and 5s we lost at Boston was incredible in EU.
I think it's weird one because you see individual performances. I can't remember if it was Furious or Nile that dropped an 11 bomb against Optic. Was it a pro-am, or can't remember how that game managed to come about? But and you're thinking that kid's like, we know he's great at S&D and he's just done it against, a team who might be, sitting back and having fun, but it's still amazing. But then when you watch lands, like you watch the major lands for challenges, and you're just so frustrated watching the EU sides. Like even going into Challenger Champs, I sent a message to Ant just going, so FaZe Black then taking it all, and he was like, yep. And we knew that going into that whole event. Like FaZe Black were gonna win that. Like they are untouchable. That team was just no one in the EU was ever gonna match them. And you just knew going into it that was gonna be the case. There is a definite air between the top NA side and even Team War. Given the confidence that they've got, like the top NA side has just got so many better teams to play against in terms of practice consistently. It's wild. So next question. Although Team War, so this is a little bit. So before everyone jumps down my throat, I'm a knobhead, and please everyone remember that. Although Team War has been regarded as something of a superstar team in challenges, the conception has been that the guys lacked a proper in-game leader, and is the addition of Denzer going to solve that? Now, I obviously know now that they regard us as Bance as the in-game leader, but they haven't been doing well lately, and I feel like there may have been too many voices in that team, or, again, I think Bance may have even pointed it out earlier on. The way the Challenges plays is not the same way the CDL play. It's harder to read some of the plays. They do play differently. They are more prone to experimentation. They are more prone to super aggressive pushes and those kind of things. So basically, he's like, shut the fuck up. IGL's never been a problem. We've pretty much smoked every other team other than Steve-O's, which is an interesting... smoked is an interesting term. I think coming off the back of the 3-0 against Clutch is a little disingenuous to Clutch, who have been vying with them in previous cups and stuff. Other than Steve-O's team, they just matched up really well against us somehow. So that's... against us somehow, and that's where I would be like, I think it might just be a ways worded as sentence, but like somehow is like we don't know, and I think that an in-game leader like Denzer is going to take away that question and go, this is how. Was figuring it out slowly but surely, but well, yeah. Basically, yeah. Denzer's going to come in and potentially fix that issue. I think they know that he's Steve-O's Achilles heel, and that I think given the talent around him now, that he's going to have, Beans and Bants to just be like his playthings, his puppets. It's going to be a different Team War side. I think it's a really smart pickup by the boys, and respect needs to be put on Denzer's name. It isn't that much of a surprise. Let me just look at the last one. Fine. So this was finally, but I probably squeezed a few more. With Miami around the corner, your team need to make the jump to beating the top-seeded NA sides. What's the confidence like right now? What do you feel you need to do as a team to overcome that challenge? And finally, what do you think will happen next year? I fucking love Beans. Probably just S&D practice, and additionally what people don't realise is in Europe the current Team A, Team B is extremely unbalanced. So if you have Team A, you have a chokehold on people, especially if they're really close in terms of skill. The gap was as much as the scoreline didn't say, so minimal, and we know that's the conversation we had before about how a 4-0 can be the closest 4-0 in humanity. We would have closed even more, but Real, even we've got the Revenge Tour Reaper, so now we're spot on. Our team was gelling fine. Obviously had a bump with Byron leaving, but we're just getting to grips with Harry. And yet the race with getting back into the league is pretty much purely based on land. So this is his talking about. I asked the question about whether I've got that issue where they, as individuals, they really desperately want to get back into CDL, and is that impacting how they play as a team? And he's saying that he felt that they were gelling fine, but that they were obviously hit by Byron leaving, and that is a little element of them. Obviously, they've had. I mean, for Bance, it must be a nightmare. So long at the top level, he got to champs finals and all that. Must be horrible copy to be sat in challenges for him, and you can understand his desire potentially to just play really well. But again, what he's saying as well, this is quite interesting, is it's all about LAN. So the CDL team, sorry, they're not interested in online performance. Don't give a shit. So with getting back into the league is pretty much purely based on LAN. Nobody, and I mean nobody, cares about EU online COD. Like, emphasize that in the sentence. Nobody, and I mean nobody, cares about EU online COD. Right there, mate, from the horse's mouth. And it's pretty much no bearing. It obviously should. He does preface that in question marks that it obviously should, but LAN is the most important thing. Everything else is nice prize money to keep you going. I asked him, do you ever play against NA challenger teams when he was in the CDL? And he says, no, it doesn't happen. And finally, he answers, confidence is defo being higher, but we still know we're capable of beating literally any team in challenges. We'll be back to where we were in just a matter of time. Denza is a winner, and we'll get back to winning ways. So that's an emphatic answer right there from Beans. He is on the money. And then the question, last part of that question, I said, what do you feel you need to do? Let me just get back. Actually, it's not, he didn't preface the whole thing. So I put, do you need to as a team to overcome that challenge? And finally, what do you think will happen next year? And Beans, next year, fuck knows. Who even knows if we'll have a league next year? But if we do, I better be fucking in it.
What a bloke, honestly. He's so... I love his energy, man. I fucking love his energy. I mean, incredible set of answers.
I was like, I'm having that. So that's going on the timeline today. That is an answer right there. You know Beans is screaming that over the top of a monitor. That's glorious, that, isn't it? I mean, I know everyone does it, but he has started the trend. Like, Katana LAN, dead!
Yeah.
Dead! We were doing it in Katana ranked.
When he shouts, fuck off. I just like, I love it, man. Oh yeah. Great bloke, incredible shooter, like, brings the energy. Unreal from him. Unreal quality stuff.
So finally, mate, we are. You said, could we do this in 20 minutes? And I'm like, apologies, mate. Not going to happen. I've got to stop calling all the players pickle and sausage. So let me just see, just working with Major and Copy to put a list together. Right. So, first question, what are the main attributes you look for in young players? This is from the Major. And we've been dying to pick Steve-O's brain for a long time. Like, I always want to try and get into the technicalities of the game and less into the drama. I think at one point I'd love to sit in on a podcast with Steve Vortex and maybe a couple of the players at the top end, like the smart players. So, you know, Vortex, Bants, you know, Brezzy, those kind of guys that really understand the game better than anyone else and delve deep into the technicalities of like how it's played, you know, like simple parts of the game, but then more complex fundamentals and strategies and stuff, and less about the drama and more about the actual, you know, whether it's helpful to younger players or not. But I think I'd love to do just a purely technical podcast because I'm a dope when it comes to this. It helps me as well. So anyway, Steve, our first question from the Major was, what are the main attributes you look for in young players that you're thinking of potentially teaming with? Is there anything besides just raw mechanical gun skill? So that was the Major's question. I just put the Major's dead pleasant, isn't he? He's just such a... He asks the pleasant questions. I think, and Steve-O's answer, I think it's hard to know how good or bad a player is that hasn't played on a top team before, and why, for the most part, you stick to players that you've had past experiences with. So we talk about the Friends League thing a little bit, but it's also probably about just knowing that player is particularly good or particularly easy to work with. So I guess there's that as well. So I suppose the two sides to that particular story. So most part I've stuck to players I've had experience with or know a lot about, as you can easily pick someone up who looks good on a bad team but then isn't all that when you try and add a bit of structure. So again, it goes a long way to showing how important it is to play with someone like Steve-O, who's going to be like, no, you turn up at this time, we scrim to this time, we do Charles to this time, and we get good practice and we do it against the best, and then we do VOD review and you improve your individual game and we improve as a team. So that structure is probably really important. And again, mate, goes a long way to saying, pick the fucker up in the CDL. He's ready to go, like, please. Add a bit of structure, or just generally doesn't have much experience, and I don't have much time left to be wasting. So I think he knows as well that, you know, he limited in terms of like how many years he's got left before, you know, it becomes the impossible mission to get picked up. You know, he's not cloistered in that sense. He doesn't have that kind of leverage. So I think he knows that, and I think it's playing on his mind. He said there are obvious exceptions like Afro, Beans, etc. They were both calculated risks at the time, just based off how good their mechanics were and how well they consistently played. And we know how good Afro and Beans are as players. And Afro's like a disturbingly good player. Any thoughts?
I mean, them two are just incredible. Like, I mean, does anyone look at them two and go, "Nah, we'll probably pick up someone else"? Like, if Afro and Beans are if Afro and Beans are available, you just take them, right? Like, I don't think we can give Steve too much credit with that one. But I mean, everything else the man does is just it's the fine details. It's the execution to the fine details. Like, you can just tell when someone goes into something so prepared. I mean, the way they've played the maps around this elite and like everything is it's just so clinical. It's so well rounded, and even like you said, Real, like how quick he slotted into that spot. I mean, is that because of again just the amount of hours they're putting in the background? Like everything's there, just ready to go. Everyone knows what they're doing. Everything's drilled. I think you got to give a shout out to Roper and Rayless as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Roper and Rayless have done wonders. Really smart guys as well, who bring a lot to that team as well. I think it's nice to have a well-rounded group of voices. Real's obviously, I mean, straight from the blocks, he looked amazing. But then you think about where he's played. He's bounced around a few teams, academy teams in NA, now Heretics, and I think it's a no-brainer to pick him up. I think Steve-O reads the game really well and reads players really well. So I don't think that was too much of an odd choice. And again, I mean, at the end of the day, Steve Vortex calls, you turn up, don't you? So again, I think people sometimes underestimate the leverage the lad's got in the league. Given the likely demise of the CDL at the set end of the season, do you feel a new era may usher in a new chance for Europe's most consistent player? And IGL, what do you feel has been the roadblock to your progression into the CDL and down the line? Do you think you'll make the switch to coach? I always ask like the main questions. Honestly, who knows what the format will be without the CDL? If it does end, it'll be hard to say. I imagine there won't be much money involved, which is probably correct. So justifying playing full-time may become an issue, but who knows? I'll stick around to see how it goes. A quick one about elites as well. So I think I asked a question while he was still answering the other question. So let me just finish that one off. I'm not sure on a roadblock. I think if my career had started at the end of Black Ops 4, I'd have been given a shot by now, but I'm just pretty selfless. People also have a weird interpretation of me that I don't get enough kills, but a lot of the time I have the most, or I'm up there with any of my team. Like we know he puts in like the amount of times we've cast over him and he's just gone absolutely off in a game, and he's the in-game leader for the team that can go negative and win by a large margin. So I think there's a lot to be said in that. But a lot of time I'm most or up there with any other my teammates. It's just a lot of deaths to go with them with a big smiley face. KD is just a silly stat. Low deaths don't really much at all. And then I asked him a quick question about elites. So this is the follow-on to the coaching question. Would he consider coaching? I've been asked about coaching a few times, so people have already hit him up. And I always say that I've still got a lot of playing to get out of my system before I contemplate it. I need to feel as though I'm not good enough to win anymore, which I don't. So I'm here, and it's true. He's fucking still winning. So absolutely, it's a daft question. Yeah, I mean, obviously the problem for him is he needs to do it online in NA, and that's the big stepping block for him. I don't think I think he either gets the grand final or he needs to win it to get picked up.
Yeah,
and that's just how harsh it is. And then I asked a quick one about the elites as well. You guys seem to have progressed week on week, culminating in a dominant performance this week. Have the other two teams, War and Reign, stagnated, or have you guys moved on way ahead? He said the second week elite, we just didn't play like ourselves. Couple of individual performances, but done enough to win, which is a sign of a good team. Anyone can win when they're playing the best, but it's about being able to find a way when things aren't going how you want them to do during a season. And I've then just, obviously because the roster mainly shit, said, what will Hixie bring to Omit roster, and what differences are there in your eyes between him and Real? Again, there seems to be a misconception what Real was getting all the kills on our team, which for a lot of the series wasn't the case. I've played very selfless for us and more like a finessey. So he played very selfless for us, more like a finessey SMG, similar to how Hicksy plays. Of course, he popped off a lot, but he just had low deaths because he was playing the hill a lot, hence his high KDs. Raw kills, I think, may have had the lowest overall in our team, but me, Weeman and Mythics all play so fast. He filled the gaps really well, which I was surprised at because this is the one thing young superstars normally lack in their game, a bit of COD IQ to go with their skills. So that's a big tip to Real there. So more than just a raw gun, you know, more Slayer, he's got a lot of COD IQ. Yeah, that's a tremendous answer. And I think Hicksy speaks for himself and will slot right in. Probably the closest thing to a replica of Real out there. And then final question. I got a shower then, so there was a bit of a gap. Bold move by Team More to add Denzer to the roster. I felt they lacked a smart IGL as something of a nemesis. Do you think this is the right fit for them? And what qualities do you think he will bring to their team? Also, big up Weeman for being the best AR in the EU right now. I think he'll bring the passion to that team. They've got the brains already in Bance, but Dens will add to that, obviously. So, a bit of a slap on the wrist for me, saying that they lack an in-game leader. Apologies, Bance. I'm a knobhead, so it's all right. But yeah, that's oh yeah, he's in place. He prefaces something, but yeah. So Hicksy, he's thinking is going to be a direct shuffle straight in for Real, and Dens is going to bring maybe a bit of passion and a bit of challenger fire that maybe the CDL superstars don't have right now.
I mean, fair play. I mean, the answers have been incredible. I've actually, like, testament to the players. Like all of them questions, like none of them were really, none of them were half-assed. Like they were all really in depth. Like I've learned a shitload just through them. So I mean, shout out to Steve, Beans, and Twizz for that.
Yeah. The depth of answer that Steve went into just goes a long way to show how much thought he puts into the game. And again, it just shows you it also shows you the level of depth of this game. I think it doesn't get the respect it deserves in esports, and I think it's one of the more difficult esports. I know everyone goes on about League and how difficult it is to play the game, but once you're at that top level, it's the same shit. Like, it doesn't change. CS:GO doesn't change. I mean, all right, CS:GO 2 made a bit of a change, but it fundamentally didn't change for a fucking long time. Every year, new maps. Every year, different gun set. Warzone completely screwing multiplayer and completely screwing COD comp. You know, the meta's changing prior to tournaments all the time. Like, sometimes to the point where you can't even cast the game because it's so broken. So many things that go wrong make this by far one of the most difficult ecosystems to be in as an esports player at this level. And this isn't even the top level, and they've still got to deal with that shit in the CDL, and they've got, you know, direct access to Activision devs to solve problems the challengers just don't have. I think some respect needs to be put on Call of Duty as being one of the more difficult esports to do well in, given the amount of problems it got, and that's before we start talking about hacking.
We won't go down that road today, Pablo.
Yeah.
Save that one for another time. Oh, I mean, Pablo, I can't lie to you, mate. Somehow it's been an hour and 20 minutes, but this has been absolutely incredible. I've loved this one, my man.
Sorry about that, mate. Anyone watching, I've normally got a chirpier voice than this, but yeah, the pit flu got me bad.
Oh, can we just appreciate the mic and the way you didn't have the mic up for the first 20 minutes?
Oh, man, sorry. Apologies.
It's absolutely fine. Oh, it's incredible. Well, I mean, we're going to be dropping all of Pablo's socials below in the comments. I'll also drop Beans's, Steve's, and Twizz's for answering the questions. Shout out to them. We'll get Majors in there as well for asking some of the questions. And if you're listening on Spotify, please hit the review. If you are watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. And I mean, Pablo, thank you so much, my man.
No, thank you, Copy, for having me on again, mate. It's been a pleasure, and look forward to a few more Belter pits. I have them on in work. I have the pit on one screen while I'm working at home and listen to them every time as well. It's nice to have such consistent, good, high-quality content going out. And I did warn you beforehand, I am a talker.
I love it, mate. You're in the right environment for it. But, well, until next time, people.
Yep.